My hands trembled as I clutched the pre-surgery forms, watching the automatic doors swallow my 8-year-old son whole. The waiting room stretched before me like an Arctic wasteland. 43 empty chairs and fluorescent lights that hummed with mechanical indifference. I checked my phone for the 7th time. No messages, no missed calls. The clock above the reception desk ticked past 6:47 a.m., surgery scheduled for 7 hours. My family had known this date for 3 weeks. I pressed my back against the vinyl chair, the cold seeping through my sweater as other families clustered in tight circles around me. Hands held, voices murmured, grandparents dispensing tissues and encouragement. My phone lay silent on my lap like a dead thing. By hour 4, the Hendersons had celebrated successful gallbladder surgery. By hour 6, the Martinez family was laughing with relief over a benign tumor. By hour 7, I was the only person left sitting alone, my coffee long cold, my optimism curdled into something sharp and metallic in my throat. The surgeon finally appeared at 2:30 p.m., exhaustion creasing his face. "The operation went perfectly," he said, "but I have to ask, is their family coming? Recovery can be emotionally challenging for children when they wake up alone." I forced a smile that felt like breaking glass. "It's just us." My name is Vera. I'm 34 and a pediatric nurse. This is the story of how I finally made my family feel invisible. For 16 years, I'd been the family ghost, present but unseen, relied upon but unacknowledged. When my parents needed someone to manage Dad's diabetes appointments, I rearranged my work schedule. When my sister Emma's business struggled, I co-signed her loan. When family gatherings required coordination, I sent the invites, bought the wine, cleaned up the mess. In return, I received the kind of gratitude that felt more like receipt confirmations. "Thanks, V, you're a lifesaver." Never a call to check how I was managing, never an invitation to join the group chat where they planned surprise parties for each other, never a seat saved at the table when I arrived late from covering someone else's emergency. 3 years ago, they'd convinced me to add them as emergency contacts on my savings account. "Just in case," Mom had said, her voice honeyed with false concern. "You know how organized you are with money, sweetheart. We'd never touch it unless absolutely necessary." Emergency, I learned, had an elastic definition. Emma's wedding deposits, Dad's fishing boat down payment, Mom's surprise vacation to see her sister in Colorado. Each withdrawal came with a text. "Thanks for being so understanding. We'll pay you back when things settle down." Things never settled down. They just got more expensive. But Leo's surgery was different. This was an actual emergency. My son's heart condition, diagnosed 6 months earlier, scheduled for correction after months of consultations and careful planning. I'd told them the date, sent calendar invites, even offered to arrange nearby hotels. Emma had responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Mom had said, "Of course we'll be there, honey. Family comes first." The last message I'd received before surgery was on Sunday, 2 days prior. Emma's group text to the family. "Final dress fitting tomorrow. Can't wait to see everyone there." Everyone except me. I hadn't been invited to that either. 3 days after Leo's surgery, while he napped on our couch with his new teddy bear, my phone buzzed with a message that made my vision blur with rage. "Hey V, need $5,000 for Emma's dress alterations. Everyone's chipping in by Friday. Thanks." I read it 3 times, each pass making my chest tighter. My son was recovering from open heart surgery, and they wanted money for dress alterations. They hadn't called once to check on him, hadn't sent a card, flowers, or even a text asking how the operation went. But they remembered my bank account. I set the phone down and walked to my laptop. My fingers moved with surgical precision, the same steady control I used when starting IVs on crying children, the same calm I maintained during medical emergencies account settings. Authorized users, remove access, Emma Wallace, delete. Richard Wallace, delete. Sandra Wallace, delete. Each click felt like turning a key in a lock they'd never held the right to open. Then I opened a new text message and typed carefully, "Dress fund 50 cents for the veil." I hit send and turned my phone face down. The next morning brought consequences. My doorbell started ringing at 7 a.m., insistent and angry. Through the peephole, I could see Emma's face, red and pinched with indignation. "You can't just cut us off." she shouted when I opened the door. "That money was as much ours as yours." "No," I said, my voice steady as an IV drip. "Every dollar in that account came from my paychecks, from overtime shifts I worked while you planned parties I wasn't invited to." Emma's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "We were going to invite you to the dress fitting. You just what? Forgot I existed again?" I smiled and it felt like ice cracking. "Like you forgot Leo's surgery?" Her face went pale. "We would have come if you'd reminded us how serious." "I sent you his surgical schedule 3 weeks ago. I called 2 days before to confirm. You knew exactly how serious it was." Emma shifted, guilt flickering in her expression before hardening into defensiveness. "Mom's crying. She says you've changed, that you're trying to hurt the family." "I'm not trying to hurt anyone," I said quietly. "I just stopped volunteering to be hurt first." She left without another word. By afternoon, Mom was calling every 10 minutes. Dad tried the guilt approach. "Your sister's wedding is ruined. Was that worth it, Vera?" By evening, they'd escalated to showing up at my apartment. I watched through the window as they stood on my doorstep, taking turns knocking and calling my name. Mom pressed her face to the glass, shading her eyes with her hands. I sat on my couch with Leo, reading him stories about brave knights and distant kingdoms. He was healing beautifully, his incision site pink but clean, his energy returning in small bursts. He'd asked once where Grandma and Grandpa were, and I'd told him they were busy. He'd accepted that explanation without question, which broke my heart in a different way entirely. On the 4th day, the bank called. "Ms. Wallace, this is Jennifer from First National. Your mother is here claiming there's been an error with your account access." I took a deep breath. "There's no error. I removed her authorization. The account belongs solely to me." A pause. "She's quite upset. She says it's family money." "It's not. She can verify this with my employment records, tax returns, and deposit history. Every contribution to that account is documented and traceable to my income." Another pause. "I understand. Would you like me to explain this to her?" "Please, and could you note this conversation in my file? I suspect she'll try this again." 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom's voice was small, defeated. "The bank says the account is entirely yours." "It always was." "But we helped." "You withdrew. You never deposited. There's a difference." Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, she spoke. "Emma's dress." "Emma's dress is not my responsibility. Emma's wedding is not my emergency. My son's heart surgery was my emergency, and you weren't there." "We didn't know." "You didn't want to know. There's a difference." I hung up. That evening, as Leo and I shared pizza and watched cartoons, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. Not the tense quiet of being overlooked, but the genuine calm of being in control of my own space, my own choices, my own money. My phone buzzed once with another text from Emma. "You've destroyed our family." I deleted it without responding. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note in my father's careful handwriting. "Vera, this is what we should have contributed to Leo's medical expenses instead of asking for Emma's dress money. We were wrong to expect your help without offering ours. Emma's wedding has been postponed indefinitely until we can all learn to be a real family again. We hope someday you'll let us try to be better grandparents to Leo. Dad." I stared at the check for a long time. It was the exact amount they'd requested for Emma's dress. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I deposited it into a college fund for Leo. The following Sunday, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my father, alone, holding a small wrapped box. I opened the door. "It's for Leo," he said quietly. "A late get-well gift. I know we don't deserve the chance to give it to him, but I hoped." I looked at the box, then at his face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before: humility. "You can give it to him yourself," I said, stepping aside. But you need to understand, this is my house, my rules, my son. You're here because I'm allowing it, not because you're entitled to it." He nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I understand." Leo looked up from his coloring book as my father entered, uncertain but curious. "Grandpa." "Hi, buddy. I brought you something, and I wanted to say I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." I watched from the kitchen doorway as my father sat on the floor beside Leo, helping him unwrap a wooden puzzle shaped like a heart. Leo's face lit up with delight, and my father's voice cracked as he explained how each piece fit together to make the heart strong. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Over the following months, my father earned his way back into our lives through consistent action, not just words. Mom and Emma, however, chose to maintain their silence. Rather than admit they were wrong, I learned that some relationships can't be repaired, only replaced with healthier boundaries. Family isn't about who shows up when life is convenient. It's about who shows up when life is hard. For 16 years, I'd been the only one showing up consistently. Now they were learning what it felt like to earn their place at my table instead of demanding it. The silence that had once felt like abandonment now felt like sanctuary. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being alone, because I'd finally learned the difference between being alone and being ignored. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Sometimes the people who love us most need to learn how to show it better, and sometimes we need to stop accepting less than we deserve while we wait for them to figure it out. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.